So today I'll be teaching probability from class 9 NCRT. So I'll be quite linear with the course, and I will try not to uh, sway too much away from the course material, because that would that would be a digression. It would quite be a digression. So let's keep it simple as possible. So here probability is I'll refer to my own lecture notes which I have prepared. So I'll go back and forth, and so that I could superimpose my notes with the text of the textbook materials. So find this quite non-rigorous, the one given at NCRT. So please bear with me while I'm teaching probability, right? So here probability is defined to be a quantifier of what I mean quantifier of if you do an experiment and get an outcome, and we want to quantify um, what is how probable that event is or that outcome is. In that that the notion that deals with those kind of arguments or those kind of questions is probability theory, right? So here probability is basically defined by doing an experiment where tossing a coin. You toss a coin a number of times, and just observe how many times a head comes up. So it's actually the approach in this book is quite wrong. I mean, it's not how probability of an event or probability of an outcome should be defined, but uh, yeah, in this context of this scenario, we could just I mean, we could be lenient, right? This is class 9 text, so we could be lenient. So basically, I will refer to my notes. Basically, if an experiment, we all know what an experiment is, so I'm not going to define what an experiment is. So experiment is something that has a set of outcomes, right? It's a set. Experiment is a not a set actually. I mean, experiment does produces a sample space, which is a set of all the outcomes of that experiment, right? So basically, if an experiment results in m outcomes, then we say that the cardinality of the sample space, which is a set of all outcomes, is n. In fact, before diving deeper into probability theory, I want to define what is cardinality of a set. Before that, we must define what is a null set and cardinality of a null set. So I'll be quoting Real Analysis from Terence Tao. It's quite a good book. You can refer. I mean, I wouldn't suggest you to refer that book because that book is beyond our scope. I'm restricted to class 9th or class 10th, perhaps, most probably. So uh, this is an axiom. Empty set is defined axiomatically. So basically, an axiom is something that we cannot prove or disprove. It is regarded to be true invariably. We do not. I mean, we have to accept that this is true, and then we could construct other ideas and other theorems, other corollaries from those axioms. So there exists a set phi. This is a notation of phi, so known as the empty set, which contains no elements. That is, for every object x, we have x not belonging to phi. So the cardinality of an empty set is defined to be zero. So this is predefined. We do not know. We can't counter argue or can't raise questions or why it's zero, why it is defined to be, I mean, zero, why it's not other than zero. It could have been one, two, or something. No. We have to accept that the cardinality of empty set is zero, and we move on to how the cardinality of a general set is defined, right? So here it goes. Let n be a natural number. Set x is said to have cardinality n if and only if. This is if and only if. IFF. It has equal cardinality with the set I belongs to n, such that I is less than equal to n and greater than equal to 1. So say that x has n elements if and only if it has cardinality n. And two sets x and y have equal cardinality if and only if there exists a bijection. between X and Y. Now I know I've used all the Sims abstract, I've used quite jargon and all, many big things. So we don't have to digress or dive deeper into these in details. It was just given as a pure motivation and nothing else. So I will just pictorially represent what this basically wants to convey. So let A be a set and B be a set. A has these five elements A, B, C, D, E, and B has these five elements 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I claim that the set A, which comprises of A, B, C, D, E, has a cardinality 5. You know why? Because I said this is the set we are talking about. Here, B is the set I belongs to n. I is less than equal to 5, n is equal to 5 over here, and I is greater than equal to. So this is we're talking about B. So say that A has a bijection with B, and we don't know what the bijection is, but we know what the function is. I presume that you guys all know what the function is. So function is basically mapping, a unique mapping, and so do you realize that we could produce a unique map from A to B? Um, like A can be mapped to 1, B can be mapped to 2, C can be mapped to 3, D can be mapped to 4, E can be mapped to 5. This is one map. Actually, you could produce 5 factorial number of maps. I'm not going to show all those maps. These 5 elements could be arranged or permuted so that you could get a different mapping. But the mapping is 1, 1 and onto. 1, 1 being injective as well as onto and surjective. Uh, so I'm not going to define what are 1, 1 maps or onto maps, or rather injective or surjective. I will refrain using 1, 1 and onto. Rather, I will use injective and surjective. 1, 1 is basically every element in the set A is mapped to a unique element in set B. That is, no two elements in set A could be mapped to a single element in B, right? I mean, A and B cannot be mapped to 1. So, I mean, the other mathematical way to define this for injective map is suppose f is a function from A to B, set A to B. A is said to be the domain, B is said to be the codomain. Then f is said to be 1, 1 or injective f. F of A is equal to f of B, then A must equal to B. Or if A not the contrapositive statement of this, we're not going to deal with those. Okay, so actually this I'm going to define it in a similar fashion, but um, the construction is different. A and B, if A and B are not equal, then f of A cannot be equal to f of B, right? We were saying this. This is quite apparent over here. A is not equal to B. Of course, that's intuitive, right? Intuition says that A is different from B because a priori we have given that these A, B, C, D are distinct elements. Okay. Oh, I haven't mentioned it, but I will mention it right now. A, B, C, D, E are different elements. A is not equal to B, B is not equal to C, C is not equal to D, D is not equal to E, E is not equal to A. So and that any two you compare any two elements of A, those are not equal. So since I could produce a unique map, 1 1 injective map as well as the surjective. Surjective means each element in the set B, such as 1, 2, 3, or 4 or 5, has a pre-image. I mean, there exists an element in, for 1, there exists an element in A such that A is mapped to 1. Right, that element being A over here for this map specifically, and for 2 this is B, and for 3 this is C, for 4 this is D, for 5 this is E. So now A can't have cardinality less than 5 or greater than 5. I mean, suppose on the contrary we claim that cardinality of A, this is a symbol, by the way, this is a symbol for cardinality of a set. So suppose if the cardinality of set is equal to 4, then according to the definition, I must have a bijection from set A to set B, where B is 1, 2, 3, 4. A is being A is A, B, C, D, is uh, already mentioned over there. So suppose we map A to 1, absorb. You could clearly observe that if you want to produce a injective map as well as a surjective map, will somehow, I mean, exhaust all elements of B with an element of A being spared. I mean, A with an element of A being spared. Specifically over here, E. E cannot be mapped to any of these elements, right? Because I already said that the map is injective. I mean, since one is already mapped, one cannot be mapped to any other element of A. Since 2 is already mapped to B, 2 cannot be mapped to any other element of A. 3 is already mapped to C, so 3 cannot be mapped to any other element of A. Since 4 is mapped to D, 4 cannot be mapped to any other element of A. Similarly, we could show that cardinality of A cannot be greater than 5, right? It's a similar case. We could take A, B, C, D, E, and B, suppose 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you could show that you could exhaust all elements over here with one element remaining over in this B set. So, so the probability of an event A is basically cardinality of that set by the cardinality of the sample space. By the way, A is a subset of S is the sample space, and A is the event. A is the event or the set of favorable or all favorable outcomes, right? Um, Note that we are dealing with discrete probability space, and I haven't defined what is an event yet. So probably next class I will give axiomatic definition of probability, what is an event, and how probability is defined axiomatically. That's it. So hope this will give you an clearer idea about the picture of probability theory, so that we could dive deeper and um, quite enjoy this subject, because it's quite an interesting subject. It seems abstract, but it's not. Since I want to, I mean, I just want to assure you that maths is not abstract. That's it. Thank you.